One of the things that have been haunting me for a bit lately is one topic which I found is very hard to discuss. Mainly because it's very easy to misunderstand the meaning of the whole, but mostly because it's hard to put it into words in a manner that doesn't attack people. This topic being ego. And when I mention ego, I'm not saying that we should all hide our icons for getting top 32 on BCX or your border on Brawlhalla. I'm talking about the self-sabotaging sentiment, thought process, and attitudes that holds us back from actually getting better at the game. Just because we block many of our improvements or self-growth options just by not letting ourselves try. To put it into context, let me phrase it like this. Imagine you play this ranked match against this random player, and they used a lot of signatures in that match. And even though you may have won at the end, you felt bad after the match for taking as much damage as you did or not performing for the parameters that you set for yourself, and the bad thoughts start coming to mind. He's a spammer. He uses easy and cheap tactics to win. If I spammed, I would have won. If he played like X, Y, and Z, I could beat him 100% of the time. That feeling and thought process is our ego creeping up. We may not realize it because it's not a vocalized form most of the time, and listening to our raw thoughts can be a hard thing to do in the beginning. But if we think about it, we are placing barriers on top of ourselves that makes it so it's way harder, not impossible, but way harder to deal with a simple and straightforward thing, making us create all sorts of excuses and ways to avoid it. It's not fun to play against this. That weapon is easy to win with. If I played it, I will win as well. But I'm actually not a cheap person. I'm gonna take the hard way up. It's not fun to spam. Why are they doing that? Why would you do something so stupid? And other things. These are all things that we all think. Some loops that we get ourselves involved into. Or maybe we don't even only think, maybe we even exclaim it out loud. And this thought process can be very impeding of our progress. It's a way to cope with our failures, which is normal. Biologically speaking, when we don't understand or we're not comfortable with something, we tend to avoid it in the least painful way possible. And that goes for anxiety, fear, and many other emotions. The idea here is that it's not something that we can just turn off, because it's part of our nature. But as humans, we have the ability to question our beliefs and try to come with a better fitting, more all-rounded belief that makes it so all of the, or at least most of them, the bad outcomes and symptoms get lighter. In general, it makes us happier and a more optimistic people. So, how do we fix it? As I said it, and I said it a lot in my frustration video, emotions come attached to a thought. And if we question and work on these thoughts, their respective emotions get a lot easier to manage. And I really hammer on this same note again and again because it's very important to understand that emotions and thoughts are intertwined. They're not separate things. One thing leads to another, and sometimes it's very hard to actually put it into perspective. So I really like to drive this point home, that your emotions and your thoughts are one thing. So let us address the beliefs that we can identify here. They are spamming. Yes, they are. And what can we do about it? We cannot change the opponent's play style, and according to the rules of the game, light attacks and heavy attacks have the same value. So it's inside our minds that we believe that if someone favors heavy attacks, they're a bad person, to the point that it actually became an insult in game. When we think about it, it actually harms us way more than it helps us, if it even helps us at all. Nobody calls someone who plays quote unquote normally a light attack spammer, even though that is basically what they're doing. When we question this belief, we reach out the possible answers. If we can change their playstyle, we gotta adapt ours. Those are the two possible variables. That way, your opponent play styles becomes obsolete to your new strat. And if they don't adapt to yours, you win. I know I'm making it sound a lot easier than it actually is, and I'm not just talking about changing your playstyle, I'm talking about changing your perspective as well. But it's somewhere to start, right? You gotta try to do something different to get different results. But if you are really struggling to play against these types of players, there are tons of guides on YouTube on how to approach better or how to move differently. And if you guys want to, I don't know, I can make a guide just breaking off script here. I can make a guide on how to approach people, or not a guide but a video showing how I do it. Our second belief that we're gonna try to debunk is it's not fun to play against. Maybe, but what determines what is fun on a game is basically how you perceive it. It might not be fun for you, but your friend Billy right there must be finding it hysterical to keep canceling the enemies that are passive or parrying or spamming. Try to think of fun ways to deal with it, or think about the rewards. You won against something you were having difficulties before. That's awesome, right? Maybe the enemy is not even really being passive or parry. Maybe we are just using very predictable attacks and not spacing correctly. Or maybe we just keep aggressing like maniacs, not thinking about the consequences and get punished again and again. But then again, it's easier for our brains to cope with our failure with shifting blame than it's to address it and trying to improve on it. On this situation, I think the best answer we could have is actually take a deep breath and try to do something different. Because if you're getting hit again and again and you realize your opponent is parrying, quote unquote, you, maybe we should just try a different approach, or maybe we should take the defensive for a while, and maybe the opponent has difficulties approaching and then you can win. Everything is just a matter of perspective. And finally, our last 2 points, which are probably the most famous. I don't want to use the word famous because it's kind of not very well fitting here, but I'm gonna use word famous because I'm dumb and that's the word that came to my mind. But yeah, those are the most widely spread beliefs that we have in our community. Those beliefs being the idea that you can change the way your opponent plays. If they play like X, Y, and Z, I could beat them. Or if I used those dirty tactics, I could win as well. First thing first, I think it's healthier if we don't think of any play style as dirty or any weapon as cheap. One of the many ways that I actually dealt with weapons that in the past I thought were cheap, or play styles that were cheap, I gave them a try myself. I actually put myself in the other person's shoes, and I actually learned a lot of weaknesses that I can exploit right now. Answering the if they play like X, Y, and Z, first of all, our opponents don't have to play the way we want them to play. Cause why would they play in the way that it's easier for us to beat them? They want to win as well. Maybe their method of playing games is the most fun they're having in their lives. Again, it's all a matter of perspective. It may not be fun for you, but what about them? Many people claim that if they use a certain play style, they could win all the time. That statement actually poses two ideas that can be easily debunked. First, we are assuming that those specific play styles are unbeatable, which is not true, because right now in our meta, there's no predominant play style. The aggressors win, the defenders win, everyone wins. That sounds like something a child would say. And the second idea is that if we did use said tactic, we would be unstoppable. So if that's the truth, why don't we do it? The truth is that we are actually afraid of that not being the case. We don't try because our ego doesn't let us. It creates this barrier that constantly holds us back in the long run. We say that it's a cheap tactic in order to protect ourselves, to admit that it's valuable as well. We just don't want to admit that we lost and say to ourselves, it's cheap so we can feel better about the loss. Losing sucks. It really, really does. But when we have a clearer state of mind, when we stop and say, shoot, I lost. What did I do wrong? It creates, right there, in that sentence, the opportunity for growth. When we lose and say, they were spamming, you end the story there. You cut it abruptly. There's no next step. And there, right there, is where we act. Every time we see ourselves thinking like that, we can just stop and say, no, 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 let's stop that thought right there. That's not really true. I lost, but wait, what can I do to improve? What did I do wrong? How can I be better? And that's how you grow around your ego. The message that I want to pass with this video is that we're all human. I'm sorry, aliens. And we all try to do our best to not feel uncomfortable in this dog-eat-dog world. But the thing is, if we let ourselves feel the discomfort, if we lower our guards to the new opportunities, we can grow. And maybe the next step is not learning new combos, learning how to approach or how to move better. Maybe the next step is actually letting ourselves embrace our weaknesses and grow around them. Thank you guys very much for watching, and I really appreciate the fact that you guys are liking this format of video where I just put some background gameplay and I can open my mind. And every time I feel like I have something to say about a topic, I feel comfortable enough to say I'm gonna make a video about that. And I really appreciate the fact that I can actually have this outlet. See you guys next time.